opposite. It's 75% Pinot, 25% Chard.
Rosé.
100% Pinot.
Sauvage.
100% Chardonnay.
Extra dry.
100% Chardonnay.
And the demi-sec.
Varies year to year, but mostly Chardonnay with a little Pinot.
90-10.
80-20.
Tasting it says 50-50.
I know.
Totally wrong? Okay.
Laurent likes to play.
You can just, when you say Pinot Noir in a bottle, you can charge more. Or supposedly.
No Pinot Meunier used in anything?
So, Pinot Meunier, we did use it for a couple years. It did not, it needs a little bit more water as I understand it. That's what Laurent said. And when we had a couple of droughts, it just didn't work well. In all sparkling, when they use Pinot Meunier, it's usually as something that adds to the character of the nose. Doesn't add much to the actual body of the wine or flavor of the wine. It's just something that evens out the wine a little bit. So it is something that folks like to use, but isn't necessary to making great sparkling. And there are a lot of sparklers that don't use it at all. It'd be fun though to grow some. So the demi-sec. This wine was developed in France basically because, again, especially in Champagne, they're thinking a whole wine dinner, all sparkling. It's fun to do these, like I said earlier. It's really fun to do a whole wine dinner of sparkling. But here you're going to dessert. But I think all of you would agree, it's not cloyingly sweet, especially with the effervescence and the acidity. It's pretty amazing. The favorite, favorite dessert, and this is like a French trifle, basically. There's a dessert in France, basically just pound cake, fresh creme, fresh fruit, another pound cake, and the same thing on top. That's what this goes perfectly with. It's not meant, some dessert wines are meant to actually have this character that goes opposite of what you need something fairly strong, like Yquem, with foie gras. You definitely want, because it just juxtaposes that kind of flavor the character of the flavor. But in this, it's just to accent. Everything about sparkling is about accent. It's about subtlety. And in this wine, you have that. You just think of that dessert I just described, and you can imagine it going perfectly with that. And so sometimes you question, do we want a demi-sec? But if you're thinking quality and you're doing wine dinners, and it's fun. You're not going to sell a lot of it, but it's sure fun. Now, I say that. One of the issues in terms of a wine list that we were going after this year, and I think we need to keep focusing on, is, the problem is not having certain competition. The problem is that sparkling lists are having too much competition. The problem is there's not enough sparkling on wine lists. So our focus when we go out there, y'all, is not to worry, because I hear this all the time from distributors. Well, Prosecco's done this. Or, oh God, all that Spanish imports, man, they're just killing. No, but instead of having 4 sparklers, we need 8 sparklers, because how many Chardonnays? How many Cabernets? How many Sauvignon Blanc? I mean, are you kidding me? There can be, 10 by the glass Cabernets when there's 3 by the glass sparkler. And with so many different ranges and character of sparkler, why not have more? Especially when you start trying all these, it's way more versatile than a lot of bad Chardonnay, Cabernet, So that's a demi-sec. It's a labor of love, I will tell you. So now we're going to start Blanc de Blancs. Where's the non-vintage? Here we go.
How do you feel about that, Austin? What's the capability in the big markets to be able to get the restaurants to pour more sparkling?
I think doing tastings like this, where you're showing vintage and showing different varieties, telling a good story.
Actually, you remind me of something I wanted to mention today. Thank you.
Go for it.
So I did a tasting in the San Francisco Press Club beautiful spot. It was amazing, and it was well attended. We probably had, for San Francisco, to get anybody to go in anything is difficult, but we probably had 250, 300 people there. That's pretty darn good in San Francisco. Beautiful spot. One of the things that's very different about Gruet, I'm just going to take claim because it's Gruet. We had all these people come in, and we had some amazing wines were there. Heights, Morgan, I mean, there was some great wine. People go up and they try 1 or 2 wines. People come, and I had 8 wines. People come to the back. I had them lined up 4 or 5 deep. People wanted to try everything because they never see it.
There's no
We have a
domestic house that has 10.
unique thing here. People never, they won't try 5 wines, even Heights, okay? They will not do it because there's 50 other million Cabernets or whatever that are going to be there of high quality and so forth, especially at a distributor like we have in California who focuses on fine wine. But when they came to sparkling, I was almost everyone, I'm not exaggerating, tried every single one. And trying to keep track of where somebody was when you're tasting 8 different wines, it's quite a challenge, but it was.
Is there a lineup is there a progression that needs to occur?
Yes, and then I'm doing that today.
Okay.
So I always start with the 3 core. I don't always do the demi-sec because you got to cut something out. I do that more if I'm doing a dessert tasting or something. I like to do the extra dry because nobody ever tries extra dries anymore, especially in the sommelier crowds. But when they taste it, they're all like, "Oh, this would fit with this." So, and then I go to the Blanc de Blanc because it's really gets back to what our core was. So as I explained, Laurent and Gilbert, they grew up near the Côte de Sézanne, which is near the Côte de Blanc, and they grew up being weaned on making Chardonnay-based sparklers. And it's really a heavy influence of what we do. And being able to work with Chardonnay, it was fortuitous because that's what grows well in New Mexico. We have a shorter growing season. Chardonnay ripens faster. How am I doing on time?
You're fine. We just have to go to the airport, that's all.
Oh, okay.
You got all day. We don't.
So this is the first one. This wine is new for us. And we have 2 incarnations of it.
Beautiful.
We have the Blanc de Blanc and we have the 25th anniversary label. And they're both the same. So in California and New York, we just do the Blanc de Blanc non-vintage. And in the rest of the country, we're doing the 25th anniversary. Because this idea started kind of as a working with Skurnik in New York. Hey, we wanted to do a Blanc de Blanc. So this is the first 100% Chardonnay wine that has a 1% residual sugar. It came out later because they didn't think it was as commercial. But it is actually one of the wines that, as I see flavor profiles going in the United States in terms of restaurants especially, it's going to go to that. It's closer to true champagne, or the character of champagne, than the other wines that we've tasted today.
That being, you smell it, you get that bread dough, that
Yes,
yeastiness.
exactly.
That's
So
what you get.
they like to say brioche
Yeah, but
because it sounds sexier. And actually, I had a few people come up to me and go, "Oh, it just tastes like I had a fresh brioche in the morning." I was like, "Okay, I think it's a roll, but that's okay." And a little almond. And it really is a wonderful wine. In fact, I do like the Brut, the Blanc de Noir, the Rosé. I would rather drink the Blanc de Blanc probably more than anything. And I know it's not considered our core right now, but I actually think it has the potential to be one of our core wines because I think flavor profiles in sparkling in the United States are changing. Plus, it's very different than Prosecco or Cava. And I think it's good for us to stand out. We don't want to be like everybody else. And there's a place, especially on the list for this. And sommeliers love this.
What's the blend?
100% Chardonnay.
Blanc de Blancs are always 100% sure.
So
Now I know.
what's fun on this is I love to always show this with our vintage Blanc de Blanc because you really get to see what aging does in our wines. So everything we've had so far is 18 to 24 months on Tirage. The silver label 25th anniversary is 24 months. The next wine we're going to do, pardon me, I'm going to drink some of this, is our first vintage wine. So this may be a test question. Did everybody hear that?
Yes. Which means
Okay.
3 years.
So there's only one winery in the United States, domestic, that does 3 vintage sparkling wines, and that is Gruet. Other people do special vineyard selections. Of course, they do maybe 1 vintage, but we're the only producer that does 3 vintage sparkling wines, and this is the first of 3 that you're going to try. So this is a Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay. The difference between this and the non-vintage is that it sees 36 months on Tirage. So it's aged for 3 years before we release it. So in 2010, and this is 2014. So that actually means it was aged for 3 years and it's been in bottle for close to a year. Now you're going to see what aging does. And this just ups the level of that almond brioche in the character of the champagne. This is the one that Laurent, if he said, this is my house style, this is the style he goes off, this is what he was weaned on. When we do blind tastings in Champagne, he's done it twice. During those times, goes up against 30 other champagnes. This is always has been in the top 5 of those tastings. And for the value, because there is no vintage sparkler that's under $35, if not under $50. There might be 1 or 2, that's 35. This retails for about 25.
David, what vintage will be the next iteration of this?
Probably will be 2012 because it was a very good vintage.
Where is it
And
sold?
it'll be a much better package. We promise.
Amen.
How
The
do
wine is good.
So what do y'all think of this?
It's awesome.
So,
This is really, and so one of the things I was going to talk about at the end is when you go out into the field, what do you need to have? And I'm going to get into that. But one of the things that I like to tell our distributors, and this is hard to do, everybody wants to focus, of course, on the core. But, and we should, absolutely. But I try to get them to bring out 1 vintage wine. Because it really helps, even if they don't buy the vintage wine, they see what we're doing. And it helps them appreciate that the core wines are such amazing values because they can compare it to our best. And it really does help to sell it. And this was a favorite wine on Monday. Bar none, this was, because all those folks were sommeliers.
we should do vintage events in
Yes.
the key markets where all we do is focus on where we bring in the top. We invite the top 50 or 100 restaurants. And they come in
vintage
for-
vintage release parties?
Absolutely.
Well, I had started a program, not with Gruet, but before,
Right.
where in the fall, do something similar, but maybe even pair it with dessert wines and do special kind of
yeah.
get-togethers in the holidays. Because I just talked to, I forgot what distributor, they don't really want to do a trade tasting in the fall. I said, fine, don't do a trade tasting. Let's do a sparkling / dessert wine tasting. Let's get food there that matches those things. And listen, because it's amazing how many people will come out for that and they won't come out for anything else. Because they love the idea. It's kind of a little bit of this kind of je ne sais quoi.
Is there a timing of the release, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
So what would be interesting, Austin, is if we timed it with some of our other white little boutique things that we do, as we roll this out on a national basis, like a Waitsburg Cellars
So we're
Chenin,
saying release it in the spring?
or a, yeah.
I think chocolate shop.
Huh?
Why not? Strawberries, chocolate shop.
Not the
Gruet.
wine.
I think there's I think there's a difference between a $10 bottle of wine and
It's all your
something
fault.
really, really premium. I think we could do something really cool with this.
Yeah.
The vintage stuff, and when we were with Skurnik included this whole
Not the
thing.
wine.
And so we need to counter
Everybody
it.
was like,
Yeah. See, I'm thinking more or less you do it when the retailers have their money in the fall, when they're getting ready to put it on the floor, drive
But
it,
it's not,
sell through.
is this really, is the vintage dated stuff really retail, or is it restaurant?
Depends on the retailer.
Okay.
In a big like ATB, it's not. But
I don't know,
although
they're
it's
putting Veuve on the floor for $30. Why couldn't they do this
it's
for 25?
so I talked to
how many
somebody who
cases?
saw our Grand
For a point of
Rosé in
difference and
the
no,
lockbox.
no margin compression.
Yeah.
How many
Maybe-
cases of
maybe
this was
Whole
made?
Foods and not markets.
Of which
Yeah.
one?
Kind
Of the
Well, he's got-
vintage
yeah,
2010
just like
vintage?
that.
One
Yeah.
of Zoo pans.
About
Zoops does that
3,500
huge big
cases.
program, you know, does
Good question.
champagne
Is
tasting.
it something I could send to scoring?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
it doesn't have, I'm on Spectator's app and there isn't a score for this wine. It's good. We should send it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Okay, now we're gonna go to, I don't know, I think it's my favorite. It depends on the day.
Do we have the Sauvage?
Yes. What vintage is it?
2010.
So the next one is the vintage Grand Rosé 2010. I only have the 2007 tasting note because they're still working on the 2010 tasting note. Should have been done already, but it's just not done.
Wine's released, there's no tasting note there?
That's what I think. It's really good.
I agree. I don't have total control. So this wine, well, I'll wait till it gets around. It really is spectacular though.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I was talking to Lindsay this week. She said the 25th anniversary is actually 2011. We just didn't put it on the label. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just curious. I just want to make sure I wasn't like telling people the wrong
Hey,
thing.
was there a bottle of G25?
Do we not say
Yeah.
that? Is there a story behind
It's in the
that?
fridge.
Do
But it's the
you
same wine.
only
No, it's not.
label it as a vintage
Oh, it's
wine?
not the same one?
No.
Like
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's in the fridge. I'll grab it.
Can you?
Maybe these sense.
Thank you.
What year was the first vintage wine that you guys made?
It was 25 years ago today, or this year.
Is that what we're about to have? Is that what's in there?
Blanc de Blanc.
What a special
Is it really?
day.
I mean, no, this is our 25th anniversary.
Every day?
We're not having one from the first.
So you have a vintage.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
If it was from the first year, which I don't think it is.
We actually have bottles. We have a library. Y'all, we do have a library.
Double glasses.
That's awesome.
And we have older vintages, going back 20 years. On a few.
Appreciate that.
On a few.
We use selective vintage champagne.
So where does the Sauvage fall in the lineup?
Last, to me, you'll get debate.
And there's one behind me.
I just showed it to you. So.
Yes.
Maybe it's in
We're gonna show that last, or second to last.
Hey man, where's Boathouse pouring by the door?
It also depends on how many.
Fine, man.
So this is a pretty special one, so make sure you get some.
Yeah.
Right, with the double or no or whatever. Well, and even, but it's close to it.
This was
Yeah, it's made the same wine.
Oh,
You getting low?
oh no, I guess so. Sorry, it's already gone up here. So I was asked how much Blanc de Blanc vintage 2010 that we made, and it's about 3,500 cases. Now you have to remember on some of these. Some of these, while they've been bottled, they haven't been labeled. So we keep them ready and we label them as we need them in a lot of cases. So
Amanda loves that, so she can get her packaging on there as soon as possible.
I love it too.
I love it too.
Labels.
I love the fact that you guys,
Isabel?
we're gonna go right to new labels, and even though that's not inexpensive, that we decided that's what we needed to do. That's awesome. That was like one of my biggest thing, and I was told when I came on, well, that's gonna be 2 years. 2 years? You know, it's one thing.
I know you put the bid in to keep the mint green though, so we're gonna keep that package just as.
No, I was the neon blue and the mint green. We'll keep it for the Santa Fe market, okay? And that's it.
Jesse's right. I mean, if you take the blue and the green, it's almost like a Seahawk thing.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
What Russell Wilson's favorite
Who doesn't drink
sparkling
Those
champagne?
Seahawk fans
They
are
drink
such,
so much
you know,
champagne.
Mexico
huge.
sparkling.
Yeah. It can be an advertisement for next year's Super Bowl, one bottle of each.
Why are green and blue?
Last day
It'll be
of
this
When we
ball
win
back
again,
arena.
it'll be.
Get one of each, yeah.
So let me get. We actually have done pretty good, and I still have Mark and Andrew here, so that's
No,
pretty
Mark's
good.
gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, Mark's
Oh.
gone.
Okay.
He gets sick on sparkling. He can't drink very much.
Big words.
Well, it's not Chardonnay, so.
So
Sparkling you can.
Grand Rosé, one of my favorite. This is 2010 vintage. We just went into the 2010 vintage. It's 90% Chardonnay,
That's why I like it.
10% Pinot, and the Pinot is bled off of regular Pinot, so it's Via Saignée, and then we actually do barrel ferment, barrel age. Between the 2007 and 2010, I think the barrels that we used in 2007 were a little newer than in 2010, if I had to guess, because I got a little more character of a barrel in the 2007. But it's very clean in this. You don't really taste, at least I don't get any of the kind of smoky or caramely character, or as much as you did in the 2007. It's just a really bright, beautiful rosé. At Aspen, this was by far the most popular wine. It was the most popular wine on Monday. Great rosés are few and far between, especially vintage rosés, especially ones that sell for about $35, $35 to $40, depending on the market. Does anybody want to know why it's mostly Chardonnay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that's the question I get asked the most. And the reason is we're picking at 15, 16 bricks. Chardonnay ages enough, on the vine it will mature enough so that it can actually age. Still tons of acidity obviously at 15, 16%, but it will mature enough that it will age. Pinot at 15, 16 bricks, if you just can't make 100% Pinot vintage sparkler. Now there may be some folks who do it in France, but most of those are going to be mostly Chardonnay also. They just don't tell you, or a lot of them don't. So it's just, this is a brilliant wine. I like to taste it against Jay,
Yeah.
and it blows it away. I've done that 3 different times this year, and it's such a great competitor. I mean, it's more expensive. It's got a reputation as being this amazing, and it doesn't even come close, I don't think.
And it rhymes.
Yes.
Blows
Gruet blows day away. How much more can you like that?
Why was nobody saying rosé?
How do y'all like this?
Yeah, it's awesome. So is it all new French oak?
So-
Always new French oak?
No oak. Oh, I'm sorry. On the 10% Pinot that's added.
So it says it's aged in French oak on the Pinot, so is it?
Yeah,
always-
it's completely neutral barrels.
That's, okay.
So it's neutral French oak.
And what's the price?
Neutral on the 10%. There you
It's
go.
going to retail from $35 to $40.
So it's in the same.
And what was the competitor?
J. Just the
J.
letter J, not.
Blown up.
Sorry, what was the price? But what was the price from the competitor?
30 to
Oh, I got it.
40.
No, you haven't. We just released.
It was higher.
Never
It
had.
was higher price.
Yeah.
What is this one?
Is this the one I get all confused about? Oh yeah,
Yes.
this is the one I'm confused about
This is
pricing
the one
wise.
at the winery. That's what I brought it.
Oh, the G25.
144 FOB, no SPAs or anything, right?
No, are you kidding me?
Okay.
We
Oh,
all
I
have
didn't know.
it. No, sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way.
No, good.
That's awesome.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's really good.
yeah.
That's more in line with the Sauvage to me.
They seem to be used.
Yeah, well, it's
Is it 1%?
1%,
1%.
100% Chardonnay.
Wow.
But it was a great vintage. It's actually 2012.
And Sauvage is 100% Chardonnay.
It is, but no dosage.
No dosage. So that's basically 1. That's 0. Anything else different?
Wonder it worked out.
This is vintage.
That's vintage. Okay. Okay.
It doesn't say it, but it's vintage.
Okay. You guys haven't tried this yet? This Sauvage. If you love oysters, it is the greatest oyster sparkling ever made.
It's awesome.
The best.
Next tasting, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
It will totally sell online.
Okay.
Yeah, it will totally sell. You'll sell the show
Yeah.
at the holiday.
We're gonna
Do a 3-pack.
No, but I want to go there.
Okay.
I don't want to do a phone call.
You'll catch it.
You're
I'm
gonna
not
go
kidding.
Austria.
Yeah. You can come too.
I don't
Okay.
know how
Sounds good.
Guys,
Go to Singleback.
this means there's something special with Gruet because Kirk Brewer has never sat through a tasting.
Ever.
Like,
Or a meeting.
why taste? I got my chew, I got my Diet Coke, fuck off. Okay? I mean, this is special.
Thank you.
Did you learn
Because
something,
it's
Kirk?
pink.
Good luck, sell something.
Bye, guys.
Bye. It was pretty fun on Monday. It was that place I told you about where at the press club, they were playing, all the music was from the 30s and 20s. I just, selling sparkling, talking about sparkling, you have great music, Frank Sinatra, and even earlier, you just get happy. And that's the one thing about selling sparkling. It's fun. You know, we all sell wine. You go into a store, even if you have the best still wine in the world, if you reach the buyer at the wrong time, he's already seen 10 people, he's like, or she's like, you know, can you just come back? Or then maybe they'll be nice to you, but you know they're not really in the mood. You bring sparkling in, everybody's, oh, I just had 8 still wines that are like massive tannin. I want some sparkling, give it to me, because there's not that many. When you look at, you know, we didn't even talk about competitive sets. You know, there's so much to cover. But, you know, for Gruet, really there's probably 10 competitors, and that's total, almost, unless you're counting Prosecco and stuff. But in terms of, like, Gloria Ferrar's the world, Domaine Chandon, we mentioned Jay at the higher end. But there's not that many. So the odds that they're going to see somebody else selling sparkling aren't that high, even, unless it's Prosecco. But let's go ahead, and we did the Grand Rosé. So just, you know, this doesn't actually come up, but I'm going to tell you. So Grand is the masculine version of Grand, as I understand it. Because I had this question. For some reason, when we have the Grande, Gibert Reserve, it's Grande, which is actually feminine, as I understood it. I asked why, and they didn't have an answer.
Because that's what the French said.
So make something up.
Julia, don't you know French or something?
Let it out, Jesse, let it out.
I actually think because our winery is actually so kind of in its history blue collar and entrepreneurial, things have been done. They don't want to spare any expense of making quality, but we do make it so that sometimes we just come up with something that we need to come up with. And it's kind of pull yourself up through the bootstraps, get the job done, go out and sell the wine. I didn't tell this story to begin with, but one of the reasons, if I've worked with Natalie Gruet now for almost a year, and she's as entrepreneurial and as focused as you can get when it came to selling sparkling. But for good reason. When she was a child, her father, when they were getting the property in France going, they would load up a van. They would put bottles of champagne in the bottom of the van, cover the whole bottom, and put a mattress on the top. But when they started, the mattress was closer to the ceiling of the van. Her and her brother would lay on this mattress, and they would go to Monaco, They would go to Paris, which is fairly far away. They would go to the coast. They would go wherever, and they would sell it bottle to bottle to restaurants and small retailers. So it's really different than, everybody sees commercials of Dom, not commercials of Dom, but Veuve, and then hear stories about Dom and so forth. No, this is a different story. These are folks that, I'm going to make a great product, but I'm going to go sell it by hand to little restaurants, stores, whatever. So when you work with Natalie, she's all about hard work and relentless work. And I think I noticed that story here at Precept. We get out and we sell some wine. It may be awesome wine, but we work, and then we play. So this is a specialized wine, y'all. This is different than everything else we've done. This is the Gibert Grand Reserve. It is 100% Chardonnay, but it is what you call a tête de cuvée. So a tête de cuvée is usually a stylized sparkler or champagne that you make small amounts of that a winemaker wants to do something special with. It may not appeal to the masses, but it's something that winemaker in particular wants to do. And this is Laurent's tête de cuvée. And he grew up, and he and his father spent time working for free at a winery called Krug. And Krug is considered by almost any measure one of the top 3 or 4 champagne houses. But they make a stylized reserve wine there that's very different. So, except for the Grand Reserve Rosé, where there's just a touch of barrel aging on the Pinot, which is only 10%, this wine, as they also do in Krug, we take our best Chardonnay, we barrel ferment, barrel age for 3 to 6 months, and then we put it on tirage for 5 years. And what I want you guys, when you taste it, think of the acidity that's in that glass. Think of the fruit that's in that glass. It's fine. Now this is 2014, right?
Yeah.
This is 2007 released. I'm not released, but this is 2007 vintage, pardon me. So we're talking 7 years. So it's been on tirage for 5 years, but it's been in bottle for 2 extra years. And show me another still wine that's 7 years old that has this kind of, that's what's special not only about our wine, but also sparkling wine in general. And when you're thinking food, when you're thinking of who to sell it to and talk about it to, this is a great example of what sparkling can do. This wine was just released. We just finished in 2005. And this will age for another 15, 20 years and be bright and wonderful and awesome. It'll just get a little nuttier and a little,
So what's the next vintage then? Will it be the 09 or 08?
2010.
Okay.
So, one thing I didn't say, in the last 3 wines, from the vintage wines, so we don't do much different vineyard regimen on those. We only declare them when we think the wines have a quality that we can do. That's why, like on the vintage, Blanc de Blanc, this is 2010, the last vintage was 2007. You'll see a pattern here. This is 2010, last vintage was 2007. The Gibert is 2007, last vintage was actually 2005. The only thing we do different on that is when we declare a vintage, we will hand select the grapes a bit more. So when we decide that the quality is there, we'll actually, we whole bunch press. So what that means is we put the whole bunches in very carefully, very gently, and we remember on sparkling you don't want any character of the skin. So it's super gentle. But we don't do a lot of hand selection. We don't have the folks that do that. But on the vintage wines we do more of that. So we will really carefully go through and make sure there's nothing that gets by in terms of even a mediocre grape. But remember, on the vintage Blanc de Blanc, we do about 3,500. One vintage might have 4. actually the next vintage after this, there's actually quite a bit of the, I think we have 4, which is a lot for us. But then on the Grand Rosé and the Gerbera Grand Reserve, it's only 300 to 500 6-packs. In the Grand Reserve, Gerbera retails for about 45 to 50, just depending on who. But if you actually took another vintage, I almost hit your head. That's great. It would cost 200 plus on any wine list. We had a great, there was a great conference in Dallas. It was over 35, I found out now. In the past it's been 25. It's over 35 Master Somms and MWs came this year. Tremendous. Chelsea and I got to sit and drink a bit of Gruet with the buyer of Commander's Palace. Some of you have heard of Commander's Palace. It's considered one of the gems of America, one of the top 10 restaurants. Usually the buyer wants to have verticals of Gruet on his list. That's pretty spectacular. When you can say you have verticals of Gruet on one of the top 10 restaurants in the United States and in the world, that's a pretty amazing thing. So I was very happy to hear that. We're going to go ahead and do this wine. So there was a bit of confusion. We make a silver label 25th anniversary. We wanted to do something special for our 25th anniversary year. So we did find that the 2012 Blanc de Blanc was pretty special. So we are declaring that a vintage, but just for this wine. There's about 1,000 cases. It's only being released in New Mexico right now. But I loved it so much when I tasted it, I just thought you should try it. And there is a possibility that it's kind of like, I didn't even mention it, but the first 3 wines are 375s. But we only make 10,000 total cases. So they're limited, right? This is limited. So even though initially it was just for New Mexico, I would like us to consider maybe for some other places. And I am going to try this because I've only had it once. So this is a Blanc de Blanc. It is, we declared it one of our finest wines, so it would be a vintage normally, but we decided just to call it G25 for our 25th anniversary. It is different than the 25th anniversary. And there was a little bit of confusion earlier last week, I think, on what the difference was. But this would probably, I think it retails at the winery for 25. It's actually a bargain. And when you taste it, well, you guys tell me when you taste it. I mean, all our wines are kind of a bargain.
It's 40 if it has glitter, it's 25 all the grandchildren.
Hey David, do you guys call yourself grower champagne? Or grower sparkling?
We
You say
could.
that?
We don't.
Yeah.
Is that legal?
Because we have to call ourselves a grower sparkler.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have the panache that a grower champagne does. But I love this one.
How many other grower sparklers do you think there are nationally?
Well, technically, everybody would be. I mean, Domaine Chandon would be.
Everybody's got their own land.
Yeah, I think so. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with the woman who started Domaine Chandon. And it actually started very similar to the way we started our winery. The folks came over from Chandon. The guy he was out of his garage in Napa. She just went in and volunteered herself because she had gone to the Sorbonne, and so she ended up running it in Saint Superi. She's written a couple of books, and I would actually, though we don't talk about a competitor very often, her 2 books actually are very informative about sparkling. It's called Boardroom to Bubbles, and they're pretty instructive. She's an amazing woman. She's retired now. She has a little winery, Villa Ragazzi, in Napa, but she's pretty awesome.
What's her name?
Michaela Rodeno. Michaela Rodeno. she'll appreciate. You all can all order the books now. She just does it like a little bit of. Sorry, I probably shouldn't like it, but it does. It's amazing because most of the sparkling houses kind of got their start. Now, obviously, they poured big money into it, so it's different. But so, Blanc de Blanc, just a declared vintage. It's just the balance of this wine is pretty amazing. That's all I can say. I would. Every other year in New York is the New York Wine Experience where they bring in the foreign wines. Now every year they have a little bit of foreign wines, but every other year is when they have like all the champagnes. So that was last year, and then next year in 2015 they'll have it again. I've gone to that for 10 years because as often is the case in our world, you end up kind of focusing on one thing or something, and I did that. It was the only place that I could go and try the best wines of the world with the winemaker. So it's a spectacular event, and they'll have, every amazing champagne house will be there all in a row. The only American one is Schwansburg, so it was my desire at some point for us to be the other American sparkler to be there. I think that would be a great.
Oh, trust me, I took notes right here.
But what's amazing is when I've done that 10 years, right?
You go
So over
attend
20 years, I've
yeah.
gone 10 times.
Yeah.
It's an amazing event. So to try, they'll have Salon and they'll have, Dom Perignon, and, everybody will be there, the great houses. And some of them I don't think are that great, but they're the great champagne houses, but a lot of them are. And I love Domaine Taittinger. It's one of my favorites, and Krug. And this wine right here, I'm sorry, I'm not apologizing, I shouldn't apologize. This ranks up with and for $25, we probably should have it priced at $35. It's kind of ridiculous to have
So
it.
I know what the pitch to Marvin Shankin is. We not only ask for Gruet to be included, but we also ask him to do a Pepsi challenge of the champagne and sparkling category as one of the seminars at the event.
That would be awesome.
With Gruet included. How cool would that be?
It would be very cool.
Just throw the red herrings of the domestics in with the old
No,
world.
I think it could shake things up tremendously.
I love
it.
it.
Could become, it could be the Spurrier tasting of the late 70s. Putting,
And I can
that
already,
on the map.
an incentive going to the New York Wine Experience.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure, why not?
T-pill?
Gruet, you can do the Gurgage of the 70s. The winemaker.
So the last wine, and I do this, there's a debate at the
Chateau
winery.
Blanc.
If you talk to Joseph, who's been with the winery for a long time, I think you all have met him. He works the tri-state area now. Or even, I think Laurent would actually agree with me. I do this wine last. There's a debate that this wine could be done at the beginning. But if you do, it does affect the rest of the wine. So the next wine is called Sauvage. Sauvage means wild, but it's also the word in Champagne that signifies a zero dosage sparkler or champagne.
Okay, so I have a question. So can dosage and RS be used interchangeably? Because on the tasting notes and such, I'm a little confused still about the distinction.
So when you say they are basically.
Interchangeable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have the sugar and the liqueur that's added to the still wine to make the sparkling wine.
Mm-hmm.
But literally, that's why you rack them, because it all dies.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no sugar left, even the second part of the process. So any sugar that's left is the dosage that's added. And that's that 1%, 1.6, 2.3. Just depends on, and that's how you make different sparkling wine. It's